Okay, good morning all. It's a Sunday morning, so I thought I would make a video. This is semi-structured, taken from notes and research. A few observations from manosphere content. Why are so many people focusing solely on problems? It seems to be so deeply entrenched now in the manosphere. But everyone is focusing on problems, political problems, legal issues, problems regarding race and gender, or social and economic problems. Now, that's only your first stage of awakening. To quote Spetsnaz once said, "Awareness is a bitter pill to swallow." Yeah. So, becoming aware of the obstacles and limitations your specific set of circumstances present you with is only the first step. What we need to ask ourselves is, what are we prepared to do about it? How you choose to react is up to you. You've got the freedom to adopt any attitude to any given situation. I've spoken about Viktor Frankl many, many times, but you have the freedom to adopt any attitude to any given situation. And that attitude, that outlook, will determine which actions, if any, you decide to take in response to external influences, those being people, or your internal biology, sickness, injury, injustice, whatever. You fill in the blank. See, people will always do whatever they want, regardless of your feelings or beliefs. Very rarely will anyone consider your thoughts or emotions unless they stand to benefit in some way from that interaction. And nor should you expect them to. This is what politicians do. Yeah, populism. They tell you what you want to hear so they can get in power. And then more often than not, they break their promises and you don't get what you want. Um, so the world doesn't owe you anything. It's not going to accommodate you. It's not going to bend to your will or the will of your chosen tribe or clan. So if you're one of these people who wants to assimilate the whole world, to be like you, to be like your kind, um, if you consider your kind to be a kind, I mean, the human race is the human race. We're all people. It's a bit like dogs. Many different breeds of dogs, but they're all dogs. It's a species. So yeah, to expect someone to assimilate into your customs and ways of life is unrealistic. People will do what's best for them. People will do what they want to do, regardless of how much you complain or protest. It's just not going to happen. So the sooner men realize this, the sooner they begin to think critically and independently outside of that tribalistic echo chamber and outside of the groupthink. I mean, groupthink can only be broken by a devil's advocate. But with all this gatekeeping, all the dogmatism, and there's obviously no shortage of blind followers, there's no room for differing opinions, even evidence-based ones. So to challenge the now deeply rooted and often irrational beliefs that have been allowed to permeate and become entrenched in some men's minds is nigh on impossible these days. This is where we see the radicalization and the extremism creeping in. People have been polarized, and it's a serious issue. I've called out certain people because they've become extreme and polarized, But to reverse that process of brainwashing, of radicalization, you would need a psychological debrief. So think about that. If it's happened to you and you're aware of it and you feel in some way that you need to put the brakes on, you're aware that something's wrong, you will need professional help to undo that brainwashing. Yeah? Or you're going to keep going down that dark road. Unfortunately, the men who've been doing this are beginning to see it as some kind of victory. There's only a small group of them, but they're trying to monopolize the manosphere, often for donations and online clout and all this stuff that, really doesn't mean anything. It doesn't help men. They claim to be helping men, but this is a self-serving operation. I want you to understand. Now, I'm going to call out specifically the men over 50, the white American men, the Christian, traditional conservative men. Now, there's one thing you need to understand, because I can see this from the outside in, and this is going to offend people, and it needs to be said. The rest of the world is starting to view you men and your kind as being backwards. They're starting to see you as a backwards people. This is not just my opinion. If you look outside of your filter bubbles, outside of your echo chambers, and see what people say about the older white American men, you're fossils. I mean, it's been said before, but they're laughing at you now. They're actually pointing and laughing at you because the way you want to live your life is outdated, and it's going to die with you men. So to expect the rest of the world to accommodate your thoughts and feelings, the way you believe they should be living, it's not going to happen. Not going to happen. They've moved on. They're just waiting for you to expire. And again, this is not a personal slight. This is not a personal attack. But I think 46% of men over 40 in the USA are classed as being obese. And that will take between 14 to 20 years off your lifespan. So it's something to think about, You're not going to be around for long, some of you men. I may not be around for long. I'm the wrong side of 50. Who knows when I could die? I've lived quite a harsh life in construction. Been subjected to quite a lot of stress. But yeah, it's something we got to think about, You've got to look after yourselves. Right. Once upon a time, in the manosphere, we had valid grievances and we had legitimate arguments and we were taken seriously. That's how this thing grew. That's how the red pill spread, but it's become something else now. And now it's all about perpetual rage. So you're not going to be taken as seriously. You need to have legitimate arguments. You need to be able to prove that in the real world you really are marginalized or oppressed before you can hold up a victim card. And even then, if you spend too much time waving your victim card around and not looking for solutions, you're wasting your time. So that's what this video is about. Solutions versus stagnation. So what we've seen is men spend so much time in this stagnation phase. They've become irrational. They are exposing themselves to incredible amounts of toxic content, and it's led to this pathological extremism, and it's brought in other forms of pathological extremism, nationalism, tribalism, all these other isms that quite frankly don't see you moving forward. You're continually pointing your finger at the problem. You're focusing on the problem, and we're going to get into why that doesn't work in terms of human interactions, in terms of the human condition. So sad to say, a lot of these men can't be saved. You know, you're in limbo, and you're sort of wandering aimlessly through the varying levels of purgatory, and eventually you're just going to exist entirely in a hell of your own making. Now, if you've watched all my content, you will know that I've never suggested a man should wallow in the throes of self-pity. I've always been about solutions. If you don't like the hand you've been dealt, or the situations you find yourself in, you are always free to remove yourself from that situation, you know, from that environment. You're always free. You know, maybe temporarily, you know, you might have commitments, you might have responsibilities you have to take care of, but you are always free to make plans to remove yourself from that environment. It's okay, we're rocking. If the camera's moving. A little bit windy out today, not too bad. So remember, the world is not going to change to accommodate you or your kind. There are too many different people with different wants and needs to yours. As my good friend Bruno Berry once said when he quoted Thomas Sowell, there are no solutions, only trade-offs. Now, what does this mean? Because this video is about solutions after all, but what are solutions? Do we understand what that word means? Do we have unrealistic expectations when we come up with plans and solutions? So, as Bruno rightly says, there are no solutions, only trade-offs. Now, what does this mean? Well, I personally think it means that every solution you find will have its own individual set of challenges and obstacles to overcome. Indeed, you may even have to take a few steps backward to make sacrifices in order to move forwards. So you will no doubt lose people, you'll lose possessions along the way. So there will be trade-offs. You have to make trade-offs in order to reach your ultimate goal. You will become disconnected from familiar things. You may even feel completely lost. Now, disconnection is a social science term. If you look in the picture, down the bottom there are a couple of books. My first year of psychology, Understanding Social Lives, and you cover disconnections and connections, the ways in which you are connected and disconnected from familiar things in your environment: people, food, language, clothing, anything that builds your personal or cultural identity. So when you become disconnected, it's quite dangerous. It's quite a dangerous thing to lose your identity, especially all of a sudden, to be removed from your environment, can be quite a dangerous thing. And it's often a good idea to remain in touch with people or familiar things from your previous life or your previous identity, just to give yourself a sense of self again. Or you can become quite disconnected. It doesn't sound like a serious word, but being disconnected is quite a serious thing, because once you lose your identity, you lose your sense of purpose. You don't really know why you're here, or you don't really have a reason to get up in the morning. Everything is foreign, everything is different, but that's not all bad, and we'll get into that. So yeah, however, you will learn new skills, you will make new friends and important contacts. You will experience new things, you will broaden your horizons, and you will become less ignorant and bigoted. So when you disconnect yourself, when you remove yourself from familiar things or people who have exactly the same outlook as you will become wiser, older, wiser, less blinkered. You will grow as an individual, and you will grow as an autonomous man. You will become more capable and less reliant on familiar things. Your world will no longer own you completely, and you will begin to define your own way of life and your own way of living. drink of tea. Okay, so let's get into some real psychology now. I'm so bored of all this online garbage continually going on about narcissism or the ego, as if they're somehow qualified to remotely diagnose people they've never even interacted with. Right, the ego comes from Freudian psychoanalytic theory. It is low in ecological validity. What is ecological validity? You should really go away and look up these terms. Ecological validity is something that isn't true to life. It might be like a logical fallacy, say. Ecological validity is something that can be observed, something you've experienced, and something that's real. So just by proving something with words or with an argument doesn't necessarily mean you can generalize with it. Doesn't necessarily mean it's commonplace. And it may, in fact, be completely wrong, completely untrue. But people have a way of twisting words, manipulating language to make things sound plausible. So ecological validity means it's true to life. It's observable in the real world. So you have to watch Freud. You have to watch Freud. He is low. His theories are low in ecological validity. Most of Freud's theories are unfalsifiable. It means they can't be tested. And they are statistically insignificant. So in simple terms, it doesn't stand up to experimental scrutiny. Now I'm going to leave a lecture by Paul Bloom, Dr. Paul Bloom from Yale. I'll leave it in the description. He does a 1 hour long lecture on Freud, which is part of I think there's 20 lectures in that series. So that's interesting if you want to look at the work of Freud. Now, the recent trend for referring to everyone with self-serving personality traits as being narcissistic is also baseless, and it's simply untrue. A lot of this is subjective. Without a healthy degree of narcissism and rational self-interest, people would simply fail at everything they do. Now, if you look at most of these videos about narcissism, because it's become a trend and everyone's an expert on it now, because they watched a few videos on YouTube, that's not research. Okay, that's not evidence-based. This stuff is becoming more and more subjective, more based on people's personal opinions and experiences. Most of these women, if you notice, are middle-aged women, Karens and crazy cat ladies, and they're blaming their ex-husbands, which shows a distinct lack of personal accountability on their behalf for the part they played in their relationship breakdowns. So it's very convenient to label everyone else as a narcissist and find these narcissistic traits everywhere. It happened a while ago with autism. Everyone was autistic because they didn't make eye contact or they just gesticulated often. These are just specific traits that make up part of an overall diagnostic criteria. You need many collective traits to be able to diagnose someone as having a diagnostic label or a condition, a mental health condition. And we're going to get into diagnostics as well, so we can understand how that works and how flawed diagnostic manuals are. Now, Billy the goat, you're a nice person, you're a pleasant man. I think you've got some good intentions. You're easily led astray, easily manipulated. But Billy the goat, now, most of your content you label as being psychology. Now, I'm going to remind you, Billy, and something you should have been told by your tutors if you were formally educated in psychology. Okay? Billy, psychology is an evidence-based science. If you're going to make claims, if you're going to form arguments, you need to back them up with valid, reliable citations and references. That's how psychology works. Now, if most of your information has been gleaned from watching YouTube videos about narcissism, I'm sorry, my friend. Um, you need to do some rigorous research. Okay, get yourself down the library. Study psychology as a discipline. Yeah, it's just so baseless, all of this stuff online. Right, man cannot solely rely upon community or the goodwill and kindness of others to survive. He has to have a degree of rational self-interest. Yeah, man can't thrive in this world unless he puts himself before others. So simply accusing anyone and everyone of being a narcissist is the mindset of a perpetual victim who sees everyone else as a threat. It's a life lived in fear. It's an admission of personal failure. All this aside, the vast majority of this content online focusing on narcissism is simply not true. It's not psychology, and it's not even bad science. It's misinformation. The one and only time narcissism was mentioned in my 8 years of psychology studies was in reference to world-class athletes and people who excel in life. So let's now focus on solutions and how we stand to benefit from adopting a more positive and proactive mindset. The first step is deciding what you're prepared to tolerate. How much are you prepared to take before changes have to be made? Now, I don't want anyone to default to a victim mindset here. Life's not easy, and nor should we expect it to be. You might already have a satisfactory life. You might be successful, and you merely wish to add to or improve upon your successes. You may already be thriving, but wish to expand upon your skill sets and your life experiences. Or you might just need a change of scenery to break the routine and prevent stagnation and boredom. Variety is the spice of life, so they say. I like these old cliches because if you unpack them, there's a lot of wisdom in them. Life without variety is like food without spice. It becomes bland, it becomes tasteless, and eventually it just becomes part of a monotonous routine. Food eventually just becomes fuel, a bit like a nose bag for a pack horse. When we add variety and spice, it becomes a sensory experience. Dopamine floods the brain. Pleasure replaces the familiar and mundane experience of eating for mere sustenance. We look for ways to improve and enhance this experience we call life. More tea. Okay, by focusing on solutions and not problems, strengths and not weaknesses, and what's going well rather than what's going wrong, we cultivate a positive, robust, and pragmatic way of making progress. Pragmatic meaning dealing with situations rationally and realistically, being practical as opposed to adopting strategies based on the personal biases and assumptions of others. We focus on facts, not feelings. To quote William James, the father of modern psychology, the art of being wise is the art of knowing what to overlook. The art of being wise is the art of knowing what to overlook. Finding solutions is as much about what we don't do as what we choose to do, what we choose to focus our time and energy on. It's about the solutions we focus on, not the problems we dwell on, and waste precious time lamenting over. Now, men like Ohio Dan, you've said I should make more content, add to the philosophy. You left a comment once saying, make more videos. Okay. You're still making videos about feminism after 10 years of making content. You need to move on. Okay, forget it. It's futile. You're wasting precious time and energy. You know, that time and energy could be better spent on more productive endeavors. So if we want to push this philosophy forwards, we can't be speaking about stuff we were speaking about 15, 20 years ago. That's been done to death. As I said in the introduction to this video, focusing solely on problems should be the first stage of your awakening, not your entire outlook on life. You know, you need to focus on solutions if you truly wish to elevate yourself and transcend through the levels to self-actualization. Remember that? Self-actualization? So firstly, define solutions in ways that help you move directly towards them. And what do I mean by this? Research is key. How we imagine a change of circumstances to be can be very different to the reality of potential outcomes. I'm not saying don't be optimistic. What I'm saying is don't allow yourself to be sold dreams or lies without first speaking to people who live the way you plan to live. So for example, the recent trend for van life. There are trade-offs and sacrifices to be made in order to obtain and maintain the greater degrees of freedom van life may afford you. But are you able to live comfortably and tolerate the new challenges and restrictions that come with living in a vehicle full-time? As with all personal and social situations, we have choices, but there are also many constraints to take into consideration. For those who are interested, there's another social science term. If you look up social science, choices and constraints, it will open up a whole new avenue of investigation for you. We may face certain financial, physical, or psychological challenges that we weren't prepared for. So research is key to allow us to be informed before making life-changing decisions. That said, over-preparation can prevent us from moving forwards. We can never be fully prepared. There has to be a degree of chance and bravery before making that leap of faith. How else will we learn from solving problems and meeting new challenges with a positive and rational mind? There's a delicate balance there. One thing I learned was if you've got previous skill sets that you learned, they carry over. So things like wild camping, things like survival skills, all manner of life skills, controlling your finances, name them, the list is endless. But these things you can carry over into your new life, and those are things that are part of your new plan. Those are things that will cushion the blow and help you survive and begin to thrive. But yeah, make a list of your skills, and when you enter into your new life or your new environment, it won't be such a shock to the system. You know, these are things you've experienced before. These are things you've already got solutions for, and you've already developed the skills to deal with. Part of your research, should you wish to change your life circumstances, will be attending events so you can learn to recognize and utilize new resources. New resources being new sources of information, new revenue streams and ways of making a living, new tech ideas, or even picking up old, tried and tested traditional skills, new ways to generate and store power, water storage and filtration, um, heating and insulation, or maybe you want to live a nomadic way of life, relying on travel and temporary accommodation. A lot of people are digital nomads these days. You might wish to stay where you are, but change or reduce your cost of living or increase your income. So you can make changes within your immediate environment, which mean you spend less or earn more. Now, all of this requires a positive can-do attitude. It even requires planning, time, and effort to willfully reduce your standard of living and the amount of possessions you've accumulated. You become attached to things, and getting rid of stuff is not easy. You've either got to store it or give it away or try and sell it. And some of these things, you might have paid good money for them, but they're not worth that. They're not worth that when you try and offload them. So be prepared to just cut ties with things you become emotionally attached to. Takes time and effort. So unplugging from the matrix in a way that suits our own personal wants and needs. It's not that simple. And you need time to readjust after making these changes to your lives. So we've got some simple rules. Okay, simple rules. If it ain't broke, don't try to fix it. Some things we can keep and utilize as part of our new lives. As an extension of that, find what works and do more of it. If something yields a positive result, it may turn out to be a reliable strategy for future success. It's the opposite of doing the same thing over and over and hoping for a different result. We want the same successful outcomes as often as possible. If something clearly doesn't work, stop doing it and try something else. Hope is not a strategy. That's something traders always say. Hope is not a strategy. Hoping your investments will go up is not a strategy. You need to look at fundamentals. You need to look at charts. You need to look at the markets. You can't just hope things will go up because you want them to. It doesn't work like that. So hope is not a strategy. So I need to make this very clear. I'm not going to labour the point, but the awakening for the manosphere happened 15 to 20 years ago. The more men focus on problems, the deeper they delve into the social and biological mechanisms causing and perpetuating those problems. So that's less time they will spend actively finding realistic, real-world solutions. Having a detailed understanding of the problem is not the same thing as concentrating your efforts on finding and implementing a workable solution. Now, some of the black pillars will be crying cope, and others will be expecting me to spoon-feed solutions. Let me make this clear. If you rely on being spoon-fed ideas and solutions, you're unlikely to be able to formulate or follow through with any kind of ambitious plan. This video probably isn't for you. And your negativity, it just won't be appreciated here. Remember, it's up to us to season our own meals, to add variety and spice to our own lives. Life is for living. It's what you make it. There's a big world out there. Moving on. Interactions between people are complex and variable. Let me just adjust that camera again. Excuse my finger. much better. Okay, interactions between people are complex and variable. Focusing on problems often leads to reenactment. What's reenactment? Reenactment is, it's basically doing the same thing over and over and hoping for a different result. But we seek to understand what happened by revisiting and often repeating patterns of destructive behavior. We go to the same places, we interact with familiar personality types, yet we expect different outcomes. Now, some domains or disciplines rely on problem solving or diagnostics to find solutions. Medical diagnoses can point to certain vital surgeries or prescriptions as solutions. Engineers will diagnose to find mechanical faults or failures, so they know which parts to repair or replace. A computer programmer will look for faulty hardware or bugs in the system to find a patch or a fix for the problem. We often adopt this approach to life. Life's a bit different, and we adopt this approach to the people in our lives. But people can be irrational and unpredictable. Now, going back to diagnostics, I said earlier we'll cover the diagnostic manuals. Now, the DSM and the ICD have been revised and amended many, many times. Diagnoses have been admitted and then omitted, accepted, then rejected with each new edition. And this will continue to happen as we increase our understanding of the mind and human behavior. There is no one definitive workshop manual for the human condition. And this is not a clockwork universe. Unless you believe chaos and unpredictability to be necessary components for a reliable machine that can be diagnosed and repaired using the same method for each individual and complex variable. It's just not that simple with people. Solutions for people are specific to individual needs and circumstances. People have individual limitations. You need to set realistic goals. Ambition is necessary for growth. If we push ourselves beyond our limits, we can fail. But it's what we learn from failing that counts. In that respect, our time and effort wasn't completely wasted. Remember, stop doing the things that clearly do not work and try something else. But that doesn't mean we scrap all plans and throw in the towel. It just means we learn from mistakes and go back to the drawing board. What went wrong? Is it preventable or even fixable? Is it out of our control? If so, we accept our failures and focus on researching different ways to achieve the desired outcome. We're not doing the same thing over and over unless it's proven itself to be a successful strategy. We're accepting that some things either aren't meant to be for us in our own specific circumstances, or we may have to compromise to achieve the best potential outcome. Things never happen as we expect them to, and it's unrealistic for us to believe they should. Unrealistic expectations inevitably lead to disappointments. Too much time spent focusing on future hopes and dreams can also rob us of the present. It's quite a Buddhist idea there, living the present moment. That's why they focus on breath. If you look at people like John Kabat-Zinn, he will get you to focus on the present moment, and it's very similar to CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy. They will just get you to focus on breath. So you're not worried about the future. You're not lamenting or sad about the past. You bring yourself back to the present moment. Focus on that sensory experience. So we need to take time to appreciate everything we have. People say it all the time. But it's the simple things that make life worth living. If you're not content with simple pleasures, then maybe you need to spend more time learning how to moderate and regulate your thoughts and emotions. Now, this can be achieved over time with a sustained and conscious effort. I made a video previously, there's a reference, a citation to a study in a video called The Changing Personality. That's not the full title, but you'll be able to find it. We can change our own personality, but it takes a sustained and conscious effort. Now, I've heard one man on YouTube repeatedly say, control your biology. Now, this man is a truck driver. He's not educated. I doubt he's even read a book cover to cover in his entire life. So you want to be careful who you listen to and who you believe, because the more you believe them and the more you embolden them, the more shit they're going to say, the more the lies they're going to tell, and the more misinformation is going to be spread throughout this space, and the more crap you're going to be consuming. Most of it is problems based as well. So they're not offering solutions. They're just giving you their opinions, their assumptions. Waste of time. Waste of time listening to that bullshit. These people aren't educated, at least of all to comment on things like human biology. Truck drivers talking about human biology or neurology should send alarm bells ringing for you. If it doesn't, well, I can't help you. Sorry, but you're beyond help. So let's break this down. Control your biology. Unfortunately, it's not that simple, especially for young men. The primitive limbic system is denser than the neocortex. Okay? That system sends out powerful hormones and neurotransmitters which can easily override the frontal lobe. What does the frontal lobe do? It deals with rational decision making. So, the limbic system, the powerful hormones and neurotransmitters, disable the ability to think rationally. Also, the prefrontal cortex in younger men is not fully mature until their mid to late 20s. Impulsivity, poor decision making, and a belief in one's own invincibility remains hardwired in many adult males. Control your biology is a flippant and ignorant statement to make. Again, the manosphere is full of statements and opinions from uneducated men and pseudo-intellectuals, so be aware and always do your own research. Okay, we've covered this. Now, in my notes, there's some marginalia. Interesting word. Marginalia is notes that are made outside of the main body of the essay or the notes, and they're just notes made in the margins, additional points to pick up on. You embellish what's already there. Now, moving forward. What I want to do with this channel is use my many years of psychology studies and additional supplementary research to help men achieve a positive and sustainable outlook on life. We've all been red-pilled. We've shared our stories and experiences, but no man should ever be encouraged to stay in that place. You know my story. I've been through it. There's no need to repeat any of it or dwell on the past. I survived. I've moved on. And I know many of you have also. Many men out here are absolutely thriving after being red-pilled. Now I want you to check out Evergreen's channel. I'm going to put it in the description. And you see what a man can achieve when he applies himself and puts his mind to something. I want you to be inspired by Evergreen. A lot of his videos are shorts. They show sort of snippets of his work. But if you imagine what he's trying to achieve there, that's no mean feat. I've built several houses myself, single-handedly, in the past. And it's no mean feat. Trust me, it takes a part of your soul away. It batters you physically. Yeah? Building a house on your own, one man, that is no mean feat. So hats off to Evergreen. Go and have a look at his channel and just be inspired. Be inspired to do something other than watching this toxic manosphere content, because it's absolute garbage. Go outside, try new things, visit new places, travel, broaden your horizons, meet new people, and open your minds. Solutions and new ideas often present themselves when we least expect them to. And you'll never know if you spend your life in monotonous routines, or even worse, stuck in echo chambers, completely detached from the real world, completely detached from reality. What's being said online isn't real. It's very low in ecological validity. Yeah? So get yourself out there and enjoy life. Look for solutions. Don't dwell on problems. Keep moving forwards towards the life you want. Enjoy the present moment and don't look back, because sadness lives in the past. When you study counseling and depression, one thing you learn is sadness lives in the past. Yeah? Fear lives in the future. Fear is anxiety. Fear is worry. What happens if this and that? These things are why people like John Kabat-Zinn, there's another one for you to research, encourage people with anxiety or depression to just bring themselves back to the present moment and enjoy what you've got. Appreciate what you've got. Appreciate today. Walk your dog. Cook yourself a nice meal. Have a rest. Have a sleep. Have an afternoon nap, Have a nice cup of tea or coffee. Have a few biscuits or cookies, whatever you call them. Yeah, just take a little bit of time out just to relax, just to chill, watch the sunrise, watch the sunset. Whatever you do to wind down, they're all good things. So sadness lives in the past, but opportunity lives in the future. A journey of 1,000 miles begins with the first step.